Hello. Okay. ¿Cómo están? Bien? Okay. So I'm here to talk to you about Redux and Ngrxstore. And more sorry about that.
You do Shift Command F, it'll go into presentation mode, which will get rid of the grey. All that. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm here to talk to you about Redux and Ngrxstore, and especially more specifically how to get from Redux to Ngrxstore. If you do not have a Redux background, that's fine. We're going to review it together. So my name is Julien. I'm a software engineer from south of France, Toulouse, and I previously worked at eBay in China for 2 years, and now I'm a freelancer working closely with TopDown. I'm specialized in single-page application using Angular, Ionic, or React. And I'm also a community leader, a creator of Angular Toulouse meetup. That I was really inspired by Angular beers, so I created this a year ago, and it's a real success in the south of France. And I'm also a co-organizer of Google developer group of Toulouse. So to understand what Ngrxstore is, we must first learn where it is coming from. And Ngrxstore is mainly inspired by Redux. So what is Redux then? So Redux is an open source library to manage the state of your app, meaning all the data within your app. The state is predictable, so it is easily testable. It has a unidirectional data flow, so always top to bottom. It is framework agnostic, meaning you can use it with Angular or React or Vue or whatever. It was created by Dan Abramov and Andrew Clark. They both work at Facebook now. And it has more than 29,000 stars on GitHub. Okay, great. Now we know about Redux a little bit, but what is the problem with conventional data flows? So a conventional data flow could look like this. When your components have direct relationship, they can communicate to each other, right? They can communicate through props to get data in, and they can use event emitters to get data out. And when you do not have a direct relationship, you can use a third-party library, a third-party service, sorry, or something similar to the root scope that we have in Angular 1, or PubSub pattern, or whatever. So there are too many ways to achieve data communication between components, and it's not normalized. So if you have several developers working on your application over time, you can end up using all of the possibility I just quote, right? And your app is getting harder to understand and to predict. But with Redux, the store contains the entire state of your app. It is what we call a single source of truth. When the component initiates a change, which is the green arrow here, the store applies this change and let the component knows about it, the blue arrows. So with the unidirectional data flow, all your data of your application follow the same lifecycle pattern. There is no communication, there is no component-to-component communication. It makes the logic of your application more predictable and easier to reason about. So let's explore the lifecycle pattern a bit deeper. When a component needs to change the state of the app, it orders a change by dispatching an action. Okay? That's the only way to change the state in Redux. The store then applies this change. And to finish, the store notifies the components that subscribe to its changes. Okay? So let's see now what's an action and how we can update the store with it. So this is an action. An action is a plain JavaScript object that describes changes to make to the store. The only constraint you have is to be able to identify the action. So here we're using the type key, which is a convention, and it has to be unique. The payload, on the other hand, is completely up to you. It could be anything. And the purpose of this action in particular is pretty straightforward. We want to change the username of maybe the current user here. So if we go back to the previous diagram we can see that there is a missing part here. From this action, how do we change the state of the app? And that's where reducers come into place. So reducer or reduction function is a function that takes an accumulator, here total, the current value, and returns a new value. So reduce is only available in arrays in JavaScript, right? And here we have a 1, 2, 3 array that we reduce with a sum function or a reducer and give an initial value of 0. So can anyone tell me what's the return value here? Yeah, I heard 6. It is 6. So we have an initial value of 0 and we give 1. So the result of this is 1. Then we have we give 2, and 2 plus 1 is 3, right? And then we have 3 plus 3, and it is 6. And if we expand this reduce idea with an array of actions, we get the idea of what Redux does internally. In this case, we're going to increment or decrement a counter by passing action to a reducer. So here, once again, what is the result, in your opinion? For 2. Yes, that's 2. So we have, once again, an initial value of 0, then we increment by 1, then we increment another time, it's 2, we decrement, it's 1, we increment again, it's 2. Right, okay. So to finish on reducers, we can say that a reducer purpose is to apply the state modification. The state modification, the action is asking for. Okay, so the current state plus an action will enter the reducer, and the reducer will then apply this modification to the state, and the reducer will return a new state. So let's now recap all of what we learned with Redux with this diagram. So we can summarize this part by saying that first the components subscribe to the store to get the state, right? Then the components can dispatch action if they want to. The reducer will receive those actions, apply the changes, and return a new state to the store. The store then notified the components with this new state, and so on and so forth. Right? So you guys are now Redux experts. So let's now talk about Ngrxstore. So Ngrxstore is a RxJS powered state management for Angular applications. It is open source and it's mainly inspired by Redux. It has the same purpose as Redux. It's a predictable state management library. It is powered by RxJS, so everything is an observable. It also has a unidirectional data flow. And this time, it's not framework agnostic, right? So it's only for Angular applications. It was created by Rob Walmart, who works at Google in the Angular core team, and it has 2,500 stars on GitHub. As you can see here, Redux and Ngrxstore diagram are pretty similar. The differences are that both actions and the store are streams observables. And we keep all the Redux main ideas, which are like action, reducers, store. So let's see now how to install these packages. So if you use npm, it's the first command, right? You can use yarn as well. There is 2 packages, core and store. It's pretty easy to install. And the first thing to do after the installation is to create our store and import it into our ng module. So first we import the store module and the combine reducer method. We then import our reducers, all of them, and use the combine reducer method to group them together. This step is really important because it defines the shape of your state. For AOT compilation to work, we need this extra step. We export a function that returns the results of the root register call, and this function is called at every new action triggered. It's not really important to remember that, but if you want AOT to work, you need to export this function. And to finish, we can import the store into our app using provide store. So now that our store is ready to be used, it is imported into our application, how do we use it into our components or services? Before we can use it, we must define its create its definition. To do this, we can use a TypeScript interface, and in that case, at the current user as a user type, the users are an array of user, and the language is a string. That's totally arbitrary, right? You can use whatever you want. And once we have the app state interface, we can then inject the store provider in our services or components, simply by using Angular dependency injection. Okay? So we now can use the store. So now let's focus on the store API, see what we can do with it. So to retrieve data from the store, we use the select method. The select method returns an observable that we can subscribe to, right? So here we get the entire state. We can get just a slice of the state. Here we get the users, and both lines are similar. We can use a function or a string. And to modify the states, we can use the dispatch method, which with an action, right, as an argument. So now that we know how to manipulate the state of the app, but we do not know how the UI reacts to the changes we make. That's where the change detection come into place. It happens. The change detection happens every time a component class property changes, right? If you want more detail about the change detection, you should check out Zone.js for more details. So first, we want the counter within the template to update every time a change happens in the class, right? To do this, we're going to create an observable that increments a counter by 1 every 1 second. We then subscribe to it and bind the counter results to our class property. This counter will increase on the screen at this time, every 1 second. And one important thing to notice here is that we need to unsubscribe, right? Once the component is destroyed, we need to unsubscribe, otherwise we can have like memory leaks, right? If we forget this. So as you can see, this is a bit tedious. We need to subscribe. We need to keep a reference to the subscription, and we need to think about unsubscribing. So is there a better way to do the same as this? And the answer is yes, there is a better way, and it's using the async pipe here. So this example is exactly the same as the previous, but with less code. The async pipe subscribe and unsubscribes automatically to observables, letting you focus on what really matters to you, the data to display, right? So Angular does the rest. And keep in mind that less code is less bugs. Like I said in the previous example, if you forgot to unsubscribe, you could have memory leaks. Now all together. So with this example, I want to show you how easy it is, how easy the code can be when using Ngrxstore. So first we have a template that display a list of users with a remove button. Okay, there is an ng4, then we loop, there is a button for each username, right? The user stream here is an observable that we get from the store using the select method. and subscribe to using the async pipe. So it's automatic. And to finish, we have the remove user method that is called when the user clicks on a button, and which dispatches the remove user action. Okay, so now that we have everything in mind, let's learn about what are the best practices when it comes to create the state. So the state of your app should be easy to understand, but most of all, it should be easy to use. So is anyone here able to tell me what's wrong with this state? What could be better? It's not necessarily wrong. What could be better? No? Okay. So UI should avoid arrays and prefer object literals. Why? It's because with an array, we need to go through all the lists of users if we want to get just a specific user out of it, right? With object literals, we simply get the right key. So it's more easy and it has better performance. Once again, what's wrong with this example? There is an array. Okay. Yeah, well, the point that I wanted to make here is there is duplication, right? There are two references of the same user object, right? They're both the same users, and they are in two places. So why is it wrong? Well, because they can be out of sync, right? Out of sync. For instance, the same user can have a profile picture on a page and another profile picture on another page, depending on when you get the data, right? Those references. So by the time you get the second reference, for instance, the user could have changed his profile picture. So in your app, it will look weird. They can even change the name. It's even weirder. So it's really important to keep a single source of truth, and it is easily doable using an array of IDs in this case. Make sense? Okay. So this leads us to conclude this talk on derived data. So derived data is a data that is created from different sources of data, right? So for instance here, with this state, we want our UI to display a list of trending users, right? We want to display this list. This is a mix of both. So how do we do this? Anyone? As a little hint, we need to use a special RxJS operator. Okay, we need to use combine latest operator. So after we apply the combine latest operator, we get notified every time one of the source observable emits a new item. So the source observable are the two arrows on top, right? And after the combine latest operator, we get an observable with both value, right? When you have when the first one emits 1 and the second one emits A, we receive A1. And then 2, it's gonna be 2A, and then 2B, etc. So if we translate this into code, we have the following. So the first two arguments are our state observables, right, that we get from the store. Then the last argument is a function that receives the state values and returns whatever you want to return. And in that case, we want a list of trending users object, right? So we map and we return the user instead of the idea. Okay? So let's conclude this talk. With Ngrxstore, your app become fully reactive. It will only re-render part of the UI when necessary. Your state is always predictable. From a list of actions, you easily can guess what the state could be. right? So it makes it perfect for unit testing. If you follow the best practices I shared with you, and there are much more, right? You end up having a state understandable by everyone. And with the unidirectional data flow, always top to bottom, it makes your app easier to reason about. So now you guys know everything there is to know about Ngrxstore. I hope you guys will use it in your next app. Thank you very much. If you want more detail about this, I wrote a blog post. It's there. Thank you.